it was used for everything, anything and everything from nanotechnology that would, like, let's say AI robots that would be injected into your bloodstream before that was really a thing, before you really heard about
Yeah,
it
yeah.
on mainstream media like we do now. We were scientists were creating prototypes, and our application was helping to test that. And it was also used in new aircraft and spacecraft as he was doing that. But no, I got married and I had my first child,
Mm.
and I went back to work after my 6 month leave, but then I felt like really unnatural, leaving my son to it was like a NASA sponsored daycare right outside the gate, right outside the security gate. So it was really convenient. Well, as a programmer, we had to work until the program worked, right? It wasn't like an 8 hour thing and then you leave, really. It's like 8 hours, sure, if you can get the project finished. If you can't get the project finished, then you put in extra hours, or because you want to hit those deadlines, those milestones. And then if it takes shorter than 8 hours, then well, that's great. Then you can work on other things, right? And it's not so much stress or pressure.
Welcome, team. Today we're diving into a conversation about resilience, reinvention, as well as the power of turning challenges into opportunities. We'll explore what it's like to work at NASA, firstly as an intern and later as a computer scientist, and look at the realities of pivoting to entrepreneurship. I think starting out in digital marketing and then pivoting again to other things, and how health challenges can lead to discovering a deeper sense of purpose. We'll also discuss the art of building a business from the ground up, looking at the role of technology and how it's shaping modern ventures, and strategies for creating high ticket offerings that truly serve others. Whether you're navigating your own career transition at the moment, or you're looking for inspiration to take that, let's say, bold next step, I think today's conversation with our guest, Ms. Mayim Vega, is sure to leave you with a long to-do list of actions that you're going to want to get started on straight away. So with that, Mayim, great to have you on the ET project. It's been a while coming, but it's wonderful that you're here now.
Hi, yes, nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mentioned NASA, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are really interested to learn a little bit about, the goings on at NASA for whatever purpose you can tell us. But initially, you started as an intern, and I'm wondering what was the attraction? Why intern at NASA?
Well, it was an opportunity that I had through college, and well, why not? I mean, I couldn't imagine a better internship to have. I mean, I did have friends that ended up working at, for example, Netflix and Google
Oh,
and other companies, but yeah, I've always loved like astronomy and outer space and things like that. So
right.
the yeah.
I heard in one of your conversations on the podcast, you described yourself as a workaholic and a perfectionist. Did those traits influence anything in your decision to pursue um, computer science as one of your studies or your interests?
Well, as a programmer, we had to work until the program worked, right? It wasn't like an 8 hour thing and then you leave, really. It's like 8 hours, sure, if you can get the project finished. If you can't get the project finished, then you put in extra hours, or because you want to hit those deadlines, those milestones. And then if it takes shorter than 8 hours, then well, that's great. Then you can work on other things, right? And it's not so much stress or pressure. So I think certainly being a workaholic, it did help me because I didn't mind putting in long hours if I had to.
Mm.
I didn't mind foregoing, for example, social activities or something like that, so long as I got the work done, the problem done, the yeah, the code made.
How competitive is the environment in NASA? Like, I can imagine there's a big waiting list for people who are interested in being involved in that market, and just being able to say I work at NASA. But is it a competitive environment once you're on the inside?
I think it's more like a who you know type of environment.
Okay.
I don't know if it's about it's not I don't know how it's like now because this was a very long time ago, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I left in 2004.
Mm,
I'm 46 years old right now, and so I left in 2004. It was a very long time ago, and back I knew it was hard to get into because when I just had my internship, I heard that sometimes people get hired on afterwards, and I
right.
was asking people about it, and they're like, "Well, that's very rare, that's a very slim chance." But I guess I got it. I got connected with the right people who hired me for an internship, and they liked my work, so they hired me full time. And
Yeah.
then they also helped me with college afterwards. So it was a really great deal. And it's so fun working at NASA. I worked at the Moffett Field Air Base in near Mountain View, California there.
Okay.
And we had at that time, I believe the largest wind tunnel, so
Cool.
it would we would test various aircraft there. And our specific application that we were developing, that I was a co-developer of, it helped to test prototypes, virtual prototypes of technology before they actually built it. So it was used for anything and everything from nanotechnology that would, like let's say AI robots that would be injected into your bloodstream before that was really a thing, before you really heard about
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
on mainstream media like we do now. We were scientists were creating prototypes, and our application was helping to test that. And it was also used in new aircraft and spacecraft. It was used to test one of the aircraft that was able to break the sound barrier.
Okay.
I believe it was. So it was really fun. And then we also had a lot of scientists, guest speakers that would come maybe,
Mm,
let's say once a month, once every month or two, and they would just tell us their theories and different things that they were working on. So it was a really exciting environment to work in. And it wasn't profit driven, it was research driven. So that
okay.
added to the creativity. And it wasn't about like making sales, it was about helping the scientists, helping the researchers and things like that and solving problems. So it was a lot of fun. It was really and I loved my coworkers and everything like that. It was a great environment.
I can only imagine, and therefore it must have been a very hard decision to pivot and transition out of that environment.
No, not really. It wasn't. I enjoyed it while I was there. And
Yeah.
also my one of my coworkers, he was working on the Mars Land Rover, and he coded it, and he would monitor it while it was there, and then he would gather the data and send it off to the scientists. So that was like a cool
Cool.
kind of being there as he was doing that. But no, I got married, and I had my first child,
Mm,
and I went back to work after my 6 month leave, but then I felt like really unnatural, leaving my son to it was like a NASA sponsored daycare right outside the gate, right outside the security gate. So it was really convenient.
mm,
I could breastfeed him during my lunch break and things like that.
right.
But it didn't feel right. And I just felt like, I'm ready for the next stage of my life, which I wanted to spend as a stay-at-home mom. But because I made a lot of money, and my husband and we lived in the Bay Area, so it's even worse now. It's one of the most expensive areas in America, at least.
Right.
And so my husband was concerned that we couldn't, afford to live there if I just stopped working. So I started my business, doing website and app development, mostly for high tech companies.
Mhm.
which was a very easy transition from, coming from NASA, working
Right.
for, big data, big storage, cybersecurity firms, things like that.
What
Um,
was the
yeah,
biggest challenge in that transition? What was the most challenging thing for you?
I think the hardest challenge was because I was in research,
Mm.
and nonprofit government. I think that environment going to it was mostly startups that I would work for. Sometimes I'd work for some big, well-known tech companies and have a contract here and there. But most of my clients were startups, and so they were very much profit driven. And I had to jump into marketing, not just programming, but also the marketing aspect of it. And so that was
Mm.
really different, but that was fun also. I enjoyed learning all that, and that really helped me with just all of the rest of my entrepreneurship journey, really.
I can, I'm visualizing as you're talking, and I'm looking at the digital marketing world that we have today. How much different was it back then, 20 years ago, let's say?
Well, when I got started, we didn't really have social media. I think we
Yeah.
had like MySpace, and Facebook was brand new. And so it was mostly just, websites and SEO and paid advertising. So, so not as much activity. And then there was a lot of, sales calls and things like that to go with it.
Right.
Um, it was easier. It was easier back then. It wasn't there wasn't as much to do. So now it's like you got to be everywhere and, things like that. So
How has that transition been? I mean, with that background, I find it challenging. Is it as challenging for you coming out of that background to where you are now today with digital marketing?
well, I think even in the programming world, you always have to stay on top of the latest emerging technology because technology changes so rapidly. I mean, most people see that now with AI, but even before that, like you couldn't really see it, but the programming languages were always evolving and changing and being replaced with different ones. And so I was used to always having to sharpen my axe, so to speak. Even at NASA, I would
Mm.
spend, maybe half an hour every morning or so, just getting more knowledge on the latest technology or advancing my programming skills in whatever languages that I was using, learning new languages, things like that. So I think that just comes with every trade. I'm thinking because even now as a holistic healer, after I transition from that, I make sure that I stay on top of different trends. And there's all kinds of trends that are going on. There's new diets, there's new supplements, there's new drugs that I have to look up for my students and figure out what are the side effects, things like that. So I think in every, real all the professions that I've been involved with,
Mm.
you have to continue to sharpen your axe and stay on top of emerging trends.
It's a great message for everyone listening. Hopefully, people absorb that. It's one of the messages we share with our clients that it's so important, particularly in today's world, that you're continually evolving your knowledge, your skills. Um, what was you mentioned that you're now in a different career or looking at a different field? Was there a trigger or a pivot point that created that transition from what you were doing in digital marketing to the direction you're in now?
Yes. So I in my first business, I had a health crisis where I had really terrible migraines. And I mean, people who don't really struggle with migraines, they
Mm.
think that, oh, it's just a bad headache. But there are people who really understand what a debilitating migraine is when you can't
Mm.
function, you can't, work. At first, I couldn't work, then I couldn't even take care of my children. And then it got to the point where I couldn't even sleep because it was too painful. And so I went to, the hospital and The doctor thought I had a brain tumor, but after some tests, a CT scan and things like that, she ruled that out. But she also said that there was nothing, she didn't know how to really help me except for some strong painkillers, which
Mm.
didn't really work any better than the over the counter stuff I was already taking. So I had to figure it out myself, basically, because as a as a computer scientist, I believe that there was always a way. There's always a way. Like, there's no way that there's something that I couldn't do. If I could imagine that it could be done, then it can be done. I just don't know yet how. And I look at our bodies much like a machine. I'm a spiritual person. I do believe in a spiritual soul, and that mind, body,
Mm.
spirit when it comes to holistic health. But even though I still think very rationally, very logically, and I'm like, there's a reason why this is happening to me, and I'm going to find out why. And I did, and I healed myself. And it was shocking that I could do it with no medical background. Yet the doctors couldn't. Like, they couldn't even point me in the right direction. I had to do it by myself, even after thousands of dollars that I spent on them. And so when I realized this, I was like, the system is broken. And I felt like that this is where I'm needed, and I need to go into this industry because there's just such a lack of knowledge of holistic health and healing. And I
Mm.
just felt like, this very rational scientific method of approaching health and healing, it was not difficult,
Right.
to learn, to apply. And so I just started teaching it to others.
It would have been nice to have known you when I was growing up. My mother also suffered from extreme cases of migraines. I have memories of shuffling backwards and forwards with wet, cold towels to put on her forehead while she was bedridden for 2 or 3 days at a time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the doctors, similar to you, I guess, couldn't really provide any real solution. I don't know what the solution was in the end for her. I know in her later years, I don't believe she suffered from them. So there must have been some transition. But yeah, that was a very vivid memory I have back then, and she was in excruciating pain at times. So I can well visualize what you were going through. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about the journey then. Like you decide to find your own cure, your own solution, which is incredible to start with. But what happened, what transpired during that journey?
Yeah. Well, there are some really quick fixes. Like, you could try peppermint, for headache or migraine, but that doesn't really deal with the root cause, you know.
Mhm.
It is an herbal sort of like a band-aid. It's like an herbal sort of, a temporary fix. For me, the first one of the first things that I found out was that when I took B12, my migraines would go away, and it worked better than Tylenol, Excedrin, Valium, anything that I would get over the counter or from the doctor.
Mm.
B12, vitamin B12. So for some people, this is the cause of their migraines. It could be a vitamin or mineral deficiency.
Right.
Magnesium is another common deficiency that causes migraines. So it could be B12, it could be magnesium, it could be a specific toxin that you are regularly consuming that you don't know about. And it could be something that you're eating, like MSG does it for some people, or additives, artificial flavors or colors. It could be those things. So for everyone, it's different. But I had an okay diet, but I realized, so then I'm like, okay, B12 makes my migraines go away better than any kind of pharmaceutical drug. Then I said, well, why? Why does it make
Yeah.
my migraines go away? And I realized that it was because one reason was because of my diet at that time. I thought I was healthy. I was a very health conscious person, and I was vegetarian, aspiring to be vegan. And that actually caused me to have a B12 deficiency. So I had to stop trying to be vegan and I had to start incorporating eggs and fish and cheese back into my diet. I didn't want to do meat yet at that time, but I did eventually do that later.
Mhm.
But um, so that made it so that if I was eating basically dairy and eggs and fish, I didn't have to take B12 anymore. So that I was getting closer to the root cause. And then, with my scientific mind, I said, well, there are a lot of people out there who are vegetarian or vegan. Why are they not experiencing? Because I had friends who were, doing, following the same diet that I was in my
Mm.
social circle. And so it's like, well, why are they not getting these migraines? And then so I realized that it was due to stress. It was due to me basically going from a scientific, nonprofit research background to an entrepreneurial um,
Mm.
lifestyle and staying up even later hours and also sometimes dealing with very difficult clients along with juggling being a mother. I had two children at that time, babies, basically 0 and a 2 year old. And
Right.
so all the stress and worry about my business and balancing, motherhood, this
Mm.
caused a lot of stress. And so I had to just relax more, trust more
Okay.
and not worry so much. And then that's when I got to the root cause. So all that together, that was my holistic cure. So first it was just a vitamin, then a diet change, and then it was de-stressing and modifying basically my lifestyle.
That's you make it sound easy. I can imagine the journey itself to being able to de-stress wasn't something that happened overnight. Like there would have been a phasing period, I would imagine.
Yes, and also just studying to just studying all the different aspects and realizing how they fit in together and trial and error. It's not like I didn't try other things. I'm only telling you what actually worked,
Yeah.
just the journey to the solution, which sounds very simplistic. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But how many people suffer and they don't realize why?
So this led to the founding of Aruka, which
Yeah.
is aruka.com, which is
Yes.
your business, your organization.
Yes, I did. I did enroll in some certification programs for nutrition, herbalism, and holistic health, and then I started aruka.com, and I just started helping people, sharing the information. And during the COVID years, that's when I started a certification program. People had been asking me to teach for a long time, but I was like, no, I just want to help people. I wasn't interested in really teaching.
Mm.
But when COVID hit, I'm like, wow, people really don't understand how to deal with this crisis, and it's so important at this time right now.
Right.
And it's still, I do believe that it's just so much more important now than ever because health and medicine have become politicized, and so we really need to be empowered with knowledge to combat that.
What do you recommend? So you have your certification program. How does somebody find out? Let's look at the nutritional side for a moment. How do you find out that you may have a deficiency in some particular mineral or dietary need? Can you you do a blood test and they test, or how do you do that?
You could do a blood test, sometimes but a blood test only tests for what's in the blood at that time. So I do a different kind of test, which involves hair samples, and
Okay.
that will that will show you, what your status is for a longer time frame.
Mhm.
I think that as much testing as you can do is good. I also believe in kinesiology. It's helped me discover a lot of sensitivities But then there's also I could just, if I know what someone's diet is like, I can
Yeah.
also see where they might be lacking in something.
Mm.
And what kind of supplements they are taking or not taking. And also if they're taking certain types of medications, we can look up what that might deplete you of. So it's
Right.
really a very holistic approach. And I take it from different angles. And also take a look at what the symptoms are that you are that you're experiencing, because that's also an indicator of what you might be lacking. But there are some things that, universally a lot of people are deficient in.
Mhm.
Magnesium,
Right.
copper,
Yeah.
which is a not very well known one, but copper, and also iodine. Iodine is something that we're very deficient in. Now I know there's a lot of controversy when it comes to iodine. Some people say quite the opposite. They say, no, 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 we're too overloaded with iodine. And I think that is misinformation.
Mhm.
And also a lot of times people will diagnose and say we are deficient in iron, um, or that we have too much iron, when the truth is actually that we don't have enough copper to regulate the iron that is already in our bodies, in our tissues, in our bloodstream. So there's a lot of different things that it could be.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me about the exploration through taking hair samples, right? I've spoken with a guest who does something similar a couple of years back. I've forgotten about that, but she also uses that as a means of identifying deficiencies or where there's an oversupply. How long does that type of testing take? Is it a quick process? And once you identify it, then is it a case of supplements, or how do you then move forward with that?
Yeah, usually there's supplements that you could take to for imbalances, and also it's also a sensitivity test. So you can also cut out some foods, but not only foods, but also environmental things
Okay. Yeah.
that could be affecting you,
Mhm.
chemicals or
Yeah.
just different things that you could avoid, and then you can retest, every few months, like every 6 months or so, to see what your current state is.
So you pivot, you go into this new world, you do a lot of study, I'm sure. I read somewhere you're a naturopath, if that's correct. But you also then include coaching. What was the reason for bringing coaching into the practice?
Well, like I said, with my first health crisis, there was some supplementation and diet changes involved, but the root really was the stress, right?
Okay.
And then there was another time in my life when I had a health crisis, and it was severe hypothyroidism, where it got so bad that I was not able to control my temperature. So the weather became it was a hot, very, very hot Texas day, like 105 degrees outside. And I was outside in my down jacket drinking hot tea, sitting outside in the 105-degree Fahrenheit weather, trying to get warm because my body just couldn't keep myself warm. Again, I got the terrible migraines and also extreme fatigue, lack of energy. I was just bedridden for weeks after I got that. I call them hypothyroid attacks, and it was very scary. At that time I thought that I was on my deathbed again, because I couldn't function. And as a naturopathic herbalist, I was able to figure out that I was severely deficient in iodine, and then I also was able to. I actually used the carnivore diet for a few months
Mm.
to nurse me back to health as well. So and then I also that's when I had to get coaching, because I knew there was like emotional, spiritual aspect to my health issues, just like the first time, just like the first
Mhm.
time. Stress is a big factor in a lot of disease. There's,
Yeah.
and especially for me, because I knew that my diet was pretty clean. I knew that, my environment was pretty clean because I was already very conscious of that. I mean,
Mhm.
what things I put in my body and on my body. But there were, there were new major life changes that I didn't know how to navigate on my own. So
Okay.
we got both marriage coaching and also I got personal life coaching to help me through that. And it really helped me. And that's how really I help people with the mental, spiritual aspect of health and healing.
Mm. And what is hypothyroidism? I'm not familiar with that at all.
Well, basically, it's when you have an underactive thyroid,
Mhm.
and mine was due to an iodine deficiency.
Okay.
And iodine deficiency is actually very common because our modern world uses a lot of chemicals
Mhm.
that deplete our bodies of iodine or prevents our thyroid from absorbing it. A lot of things that they put on our clothes, in our food, on our furniture, etc., um, have certain chemicals, bromide especially, that will deplete our iodine stores or prevent our thyroid from absorbing it. So that and the stress, all of that it was just too much for my body.
Hmm. Interesting. I'm visualizing a lot of people out there that are listening who are in a situation of high stress. I mean, our world is just driving that outcome at the moment.
Yeah,
And the
I was also experiencing, I'd like to add,
yeah,
I said the major things, which was, not being able to control my temperature and the fatigue and
mhm,
also the migraines again. But other things that I was experiencing through hypothyroidism was my eyesight started to get weaker, my hearing started getting weaker, and also my mental clarity. I started becoming very forgetful. Like
mhm,
I had to take pictures of where I parked my car, for example, in order to remember. And so the iodine supplementation really helped with that. I mean, I thought I was going to have to get glasses, but then I reverted that. My hearing, improved, and and what else? And the memory also. I don't have to do weird things to remember where I parked anymore. I can just remember where I parked. That was one of the biggest things. So, yeah, iodine is really powerful, and I forgot which country it was, but when I studied that, they when this country, I believe it was an Asian country, when they realized how important iodine was and how much it could help, especially with mental focus and clarity, mental fortitude, they started supplementing the water supply with iodine, and they also did a propaganda campaign all over, in their mainstream media.
wow,
So much so that even school children, they were using as like an insult. There's instead of calling each other stupid or dumb, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you, iodine deficient or something?"
wow,
Because because mainstream media was pushing iodine so much.
gosh. I know in Australia they use a lot of chloride or chlorine in our water supply, and there's a lot of debate about the pros
Mm.
and cons of that. Um, so I can imagine what
Yeah,
transpired. Yeah.
I remember when I was working at NASA and we got this warning in the area, in the Mountain View area, California. There, we got an email from the government. No, I think it was from NASA. I don't remember who it was from, but it went to my NASA email, and they said, "Okay, we used to use something, right? We used to use this other chemical. Now we're going to start using. I think it was chloramine. Now we're going to
Okay.
start using chloramine in our water now." And they're like, don't worry, it's perfectly safe for human beings, but don't put your fish in this water because they could
Uh,
die. And I'm like, excuse me, I'm not going to drink water that my fish might die in. Thank you. Thank you for warning me, but I'm also going to avoid it. Thank you.
very interesting. So you've included, the herbalist, the naturopath, now the coaching. Um, but then you go a pillar further and you bring in um, business into your business. So you start helping people to set up their own business and promote their business.
Yes. Well, I mean, and that was a natural addition because of my programming and marketing background.
Yeah.
And that's really I felt like that was where a lot of holistic health schools well, I think the other holistic health and healing programs they fail in many areas. One area is their lack of business training.
Mhm.
It's kind of very generic and they don't really help you. They just kind of give you just very generic information in terms of starting your business. And as a holistic healer, unless you're a licensed medical doctor, also, which I do, I have some of my students are licensed medical doctors or nurse practitioners or nurses or things like that. But most of them are not. So they have to pave their own way, create their own path, and you do not need a license to heal. I don't diagnose, prescribe, or treat disease. I educate and empower people, and that's also part of the program is setting up the online business and the marketing aspect, but also how to do this legally as a non-licensed practitioner. It's a
Mm.
very important part of the program. And another thing I feel like too, where other holistic health schools fail at is they often teach just one method and they're very dogmatic and religious about it. Like, for example, my holistic health school that I signed up for in the beginning, they taught that vegetarianism was optimal. And that was actually I knew that that was wrong because that was why I suffered my first health crisis to begin with. So I, you know, I learned a lot from them, but I kept going until I found better answers than that.
People come out of their corporate role, they move into becoming an entrepreneur, working for themselves. Everything's great, but then they don't really understand the bigger picture of running a business is more than just my own expertise. I also have to understand how to do the finance. I have to understand how to market. I have to understand how to, in many cases, look after other people. They don't have that expertise. And therefore, the business tends to fail or they burn out because they're trying to do all of this. Are you experiencing
Oh,
that
that
type?
if my students are experiencing that.
Yes.
You know what? It's funny because quite a number of my students are already entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So they kind of already knew that. And then some of them are medical professionals. So they're just incorporating it into their existing practice. So I
Mm.
haven't exactly, that's not really been a very specific problem that I've seen with my students, or maybe they're just not expressing it to me. So
Mm.
that could be a thing too.
Yeah, sure. No, no issue. I was curious whether that was apparent. As you look to the future now, I mean, not too far to the future because it's so dynamic in the world today. But where do you see yourself? Where do you see Aruka.com? Like, what does the future look like?
Yeah, well, I'd like to add one more thing to what I said
Yeah,
earlier is that
sure.
another thing is I think as a woman and a mother, having to kind of multitask and do many different things, wear a lot of different hats,
Mm.
it kind of comes natural, I feel, to women because they have to do that just being a mother. You got to cook, you got to clean, and if you already work, you got to do that too. And you're already managing people because you're managing your children. So I mean, I think managing my children is harder than managing, my contractors and my, employees and whatnot. I think it's harder to manage my children. So for me, I'm like, that's the easy part. you know But anyways, as far as Aruka goes, I'm really, my hope and my prayer is to really be part of or influence a greater movement
Mhm.
to to independence from the modern medical system, truth, freedom, health, and all of that. And I am a religious person, and I do believe in the messianic prophecies of the Bible, that there will
Mhm.
be a time where, evil will be gone. And, with that, corporations that have no accountability to actual people, but just to making as much money as they possibly can, that kind of thing will be eliminated. And I think that it's not going to happen magically, but it's going to take people who care and who are awakened and who dedicate themselves to this cause. And so I really feel like there's a great need, but I feel like this is a necessary part of the evolution of humanity.
Mm. That's a great cause for sure. You can see how grey I am. I'm hoping that transpires in my lifetime. Certainly for my
Well,
children.
you got a great head of hair though there.
Thank you. Um, for our listeners, any suggestions or advice? I mean, there will be a large number of them who are experiencing some form of trauma in their career, whether it's stress or stress inducing. Any suggestion on what they can look to um, as an action out of this conversation to try and help them uh, going forward?
Yes. Well, I would encourage them to do two things. Number one is believe that there is a creator who is good and who wants the best for them, and that every challenge in their life, even though it may seem bad and it is bad, that it can be used as a stepping stone
Mhm.
for your growth and for change, quite possibly.
Yeah.
And to realize that if someone tells you that something can't be done, whether it's, this program can't be built, or your business goal is impossible or too difficult, or your disease can't be cured, or you can't heal from this, or anything like that, or your
Mm.
marriage can't be saved, or whatever it is, or there's no hope for your child, or whatever it is. All that means is that they do not know how to
Yeah.
make it so. They don't know how to achieve it. They don't know how to succeed in the goal that you are looking towards. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that success is impossible. And you have to keep, I believe, searching, and
Mm.
have faith that 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 God will direct you in the right way, and to walk with integrity in
Mm.
everything you do, and to remember that there is a greater purpose to why we are here, and that we're not just flesh and bone. We are spirit and soul also. And I believe that when we walk in our divine nature, that we will find divine answers to all of the problems that we face in life.
Well, I'm knowing that there are many out there that will be agreeing with you. I was thinking of some verses in the Bible that you were referring to there as you were speaking. What are you working on at the moment in terms of projects, books, any new courses, anything that we should be aware of that we need to keep watching you and watching your space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly authoring. I don't really publish it on like Amazon or Kindle or anything. I just kind of self-publish usually, but I just finished one recently on rheumatoid arthritis, and
Mm.
I'll create a landing page and probably a video for that soon. And then I am also writing another one about the Aruka method and discovering your purpose and becoming a holistic healer. My journey and my philosophy in all that. It's based on a Kabbalistic understanding of the five levels of the soul. Like we have, this is a Jewish thing. I'm Jewish. So we have our nefesh, which corresponds more to our physical body, and then we have our ruach, which is our emotional selves. And this is where we have to take care of our emotional health. The nefesh is our physical health that we have to take care of.
Mm,
Neshama is our intellectual health, and that's pursuing knowledge and wisdom. And then there's our haya, which has to do with our actions that we do in our lives, serving humanity and walking with integrity and things like that. And then the fifth level of the soul is our yechida, which is being connected to our our creator and being one with our divine creator, and walking in that oneness and realizing our divine nature. And so
mm.
this is what my holistic health and healing method is based on. That's the one I'm working on currently.
And the name Aruka is also Hebrew.
Yes, it's Hebrew, and it's based on a word which in modern Hebrew it's translated to long or whole, but in biblical Hebrew it's often translated as health or cure or healing.
Mm. Very interesting. Um, where can people follow you or connect with you?
So aruka.com, arukah.com. And if you press on the button that says become a healer, that'll get you on my email list. And also YouTube, I post everything there. So yeah, I think those are the two main places.
I noticed you have a huge number of videos on YouTube.
I do. I've had my channel for a long time.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, great to have you on the ET project. Really interesting conversation. Hopefully, a lot of people will listen, learn, and also reach out. And all the best with everything for the future.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Bye bye.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.